What's up, everybody? It's Clark here with a monstrous episode of the BOS Sports blogcast. What a bittersweet day here for Atlanta sports as our upstart Atlanta Hawks team came back from 22 to beat the Phoenix Suns in throwing come from behind fashion, improved to 5-0, a 5-game win streak, 4-0 on this West Coast road trip, as many fans have noticed them playing very late at night over this past week. On the other hand, the Atlanta Falcons, they blow a double-digit lead, another one, as they had a 21-10 halftime lead to the Carolina Panthers and get swept in the season series and fall to 3-7 on the season. Many were hopeful in this Falcons season. I was very skeptical. Many aging pieces outside of the offensive talent. Then on top of that, injury on top of defeat, as Michael Penix left the game with injury. Hopefully he's okay. He's shown a lot of promise with his arm strength. His talent here for the quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons moving forward. Could be a corner piece. Hopefully he stays healthy and continues improving. For the Atlanta Hawks, they win tonight and extend their win streak to 5 since the Lakers blow out at 20 points and losing the first group stage NBA Cup match to the Toronto Raptors. They are now 0-1 in NBA group stage play. Last year, we saw them. They had to go 3-1 to advance, so they need to win their next 3 NBA Cup games. I believe at least one of them is versus Cleveland or so. Look at that in just a minute as well. Be breaking down later tonight's episode. Atlanta Hawks the Atlanta Braves offseason top priority targets in later episodes. But for now, focusing on the Atlanta Hawks, there's a large online debate whether or not this team is better without Trae Young, who suffered a knee sprain October 29th versus the Nets when Mo Gay was pushed back to him and fell on his knees. We were we're all holding our breaths there. We all thought it could potentially be something more serious. We're thankfully updated with news that was just a sprain. He'll be back later this year, possibly. Prior to that, Trae Young was in his 5th game at that point, and to that point, he had shot 37.1% from the field, as well as 19.2% from three-point land prior to going down with injury, but was averaging what would be a career low in turnovers at 2 turnovers per game. As far as the definitives in that debate go, I do not think the Hawks are necessarily better without Trae Young. The key to whether or not they are better with him is his jump shot. If he can average numbers similar to his 21-22 season of 45% from field, 38% from 3-point plus, and then the Atlanta Hawks are certainly a better team with Trae Young when he's averaging those numbers from the field, especially in this new offense role that we see Trae Young in, being what would likely be a secondary option to Jalen Johnson. Jalen Johnson should absolutely be the primary option for this Atlanta Hawks team going forward. We see him shades LeBron, first Cleveland, LeBron James, who I like to compare it to, with a little bit more jump shooting, as we see a very aggressive drive, not quite as aggressive as Miami LeBron. And then second Cleveland LeBron, we obviously saw him with a great jump shot, great range from three-point land, and just absolutely clutch shot making. We could see Jalen Johnson on a trajectory to be as great as that, and certainly is right now in the way he's been playing. So Trae Young adjusting a little bit to a new role here. One of the keys to Trae Young's struggle since that 21-22 season, which afterwards he was signed to the maximum rookie extension, is in the prior season following in 22-23, he suffered some shooting shoulder injuries to his right shoulder. And of course, being a shoulder guard, you need to be shooting from the right side, not the left. So he needs to stick to that side. It's not like he can necessarily switch shooting hands, as difficult that would be otherwise. But there are multiple factors as well. Last season, we saw glimpses of his shot coming back. He did have that nagging Achilles injury that lasted the entire season. Thankfully, that is gone this season. But the shoulder was the main problem for the shots, and hopefully that has gone away. Unfortunately, in the preseason, we saw even more gaudy numbers as he shot 28% from the field and 21% as well from three-point land. So while these injuries seem to be a thing in the past, certainly Trae Young's struggles from the field have not been. And we hope for him to turn that around, as certainly he's my favorite player in the NBA and has been for many years. But that is the key for Atlanta Hawks being successful with Trae Young, and certainly think that there's certainly a better team with him whenever he's shooting the ball well. As well, he's in the mix there. They have, of course, a very gaudy starting five, a very impressive starting five lineup. Of course, Zachary Riche, he went down with a scary fall today in the fourth quarter. Hopefully he's okay. He walked away from that. And seems like he might go away with just a bruise. We saw, of course, Pete Krejci in last year's game, February, versus the Magic, a very physical team. He was hauled down from the rim and, of course, suffered a fracture, but did return later in the year. So, at worst, that could potentially be a situation like that. It could sideline Riche for a few weeks. If that does turn out to be some kind of fracture, if they find it later on an MRI, X-ray, etc. Hopefully everything turns out okay. Likely he's not going to be in the game Tuesday, unfortunately. That'll be a very great matchup. Two of the top teams, NBA Pistons, Hawks, Tuesday night, 7:30 at State Farm Arena. That's the game they're getting ready for next. Cade Cunningham, Jalen Johnson, two potential MVP candidates, as well as hopefully should be starter favorites. Cade Cunningham, Jalen Johnson there for the East. They both have outstanding years so far. So, the Atlanta Hawks tonight. And of course, they have the Hawks, speaking more on that impressive starting lineup: Jalen Johnson, Onyeka Okongwu, Riche when he's healthy, of course, Dyson Daniels, Trae Young, Quinn Snyder. He's just having absolute party and joy, orchestrating different 5-out and 4-out motion offensive sets for that team. I even saw Luke Kennard there, sitting there in a 4-out or maybe a 5-out variant, depending on which way they look at. They're sitting there near the rim. He's, of course, 6'5" and provide a little bit of offensive prowess. So they really have, along with Nickeil Alexander-Walker, a large amount of different pieces that really fit well within Quinn Snyder's offensive system. So there's a lot of things to be excited about with this Hawks, and look for this run to continue even with Trae Young out, and look for the Atlanta Hawks to build on this as well. Don't forget, around the trade deadline, they have the Bogdanovich non-simultaneous trade exception they can still use, as well as to bolster this roster in any way. So the Suns, they pushed their advantage to 22 points there early in the fourth quarter. That was their largest lead. The Hawks, they stage a dramatic comeback from that late on, as Dillon Brooks, he was the second half hero, as he had 30 points through 3 quarters. Another monster game for Dillon Brooks, who comes to this Phoenix Suns team and has provided a great spark for them. But Dyson Daniels, playmaking, he had 12 assists on a day. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, 26 points, including the go-ahead free throw with 3 seconds left. The Hawks, while they never led by more than 13 points, they did seem to be in control of this game at certain points. And it seemed that whenever the Suns went up by 22, the Hawks would just lay down. This was the end of their road trip. They were exhausted. They laid down and they would get beaten. But no, they came from behind. They came from behind from 22 points. And the Hawks, of course, had multiple highlights, including 2 first-quarter highlight slams by Jalen Johnson, including an alley-oop off a Dyson Daniels screen, as well as a putback dunk there for Jalen Johnson. Worth mentioning as well, Jalen Johnson, he had an absolutely somewhat impressive, you want to call it, offensive flagrant foul there on Dillon Brooks there with 10 seconds left to go in the second quarter. It was an offensive foul and later deemed to be flagrant, as we see Jalen Johnson absolutely having a driving force going there in the paint. Tied the game 57-57, and the Suns would go up 58-57 there at halftime, which would quell a little bit of that lead. It seemed like the Hawks, they had better control and would finish and win the game, even with that 1 point halftime deficit. But this was a game of many momentum swings, to say the least. So, especially there in that second half, Reece Shea, he, of course, left the game. Hope he's okay. He played 26 minutes. Shot 46.2% from field, 37.8% from three-point land, 3 threes, 3 rebounds, 4 assists. Jalen Johnson, nearly 40 minutes tonight. There's still, the Hawks are blessed with a lot of depth at forward, of course, having Asa Newell in the draft. Mo Gay, it hurts a little bit, of course, having KP out. Kristaps Porzingis was out tonight. We'll hopefully see him return Tuesday. Onyeka Okongwu, he's there in starting center. 9 for 15 from field, 60%. 4 rebounds on the day, 5 assists, 2 blocks, 2 turnovers, 27 points. Dyson Daniels, he had 11 points. Aforementioned 12 assists. He had a double-double. 3 rebounds shy of a triple-double with 7 rebounds. 5 for 6 from field as he was absolutely efficient. 4 turnovers, though. Definitely hurts a bit. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, 26 points, 4 assists. 9 for 18 shooting from field, 3 for 9 from three-point land. Luke Kennard, 11 minutes, 1 rebound, 0 for 2 from field. Tough day for Luke Kennard. He did provide some interesting spacing there in certain sets. Mo Gay, 10 minutes. He had foul trouble early as he had 3 in the second quarter. 10 minutes, 23 seconds, 0 points, 1 rebound. But he did look like he's battling pretty good with Nick Richards there in that first quarter, minus the foul trouble, of course. Pete Krejci, decent day, 3 for 7 from field, although 1 for 5, 3-point land. 7 points, 1 block, turnover, 3 fouls, 3 rebounds. Keaton Wallace, 12 minutes. Asa Newell, he got 9 minutes as well, our rookie out of the University of Georgia. 8 points. So, of course, in this podcast, we look at 3 key stats. Which team wins the basketball game? We've got field goal percentage, rebounding, and turnovers. And unlike previous episodes, I don't quite have those stats exactly matched up. I'm going to have to do some scrolling. So Hawks won the field goal percentage, 52.9%. To the Suns, 48.3%. The turnovers, the Suns had 17. The Hawks had 17, even. Now, Padres are likely to look at Xander Bogaerts, Manny Machado. They're a little bit older than Fernando Tatis as far as looking at potential high dollar contract offload, as well would probably go over a little bit better with their fan base. But as far as looking at from Atlanta Braves perspective, Fernando Tatis Jr., of course, he used to play shortstop, and he would be absolutely the ideal number one candidate for Atlanta Braves to fill that position. Of course, he moved there after wrist and shoulder injuries and surgeries in prior years. Last season, we saw him rank in the 99th percentile in arm strength there as an outfielder, as well as 82 percentile in arm value. So it's looking like his arm strength is pretty much back there. Should not have to worry about him throwing from shortstop to first base, as I'm sure the Padres' concerns were moving him there. Of course, they've also had some better options. Xander Bogaerts, absolutely stellar shortstop there for the Padres. For the Braves, and looking at Fernando Tatis Jr. potentially joining them, you might want to consider at least resting him somewhere between 30-40 games. So you'd have, hopefully, Nacho Alvarez is still there after a potential trade. He might not be, but he might have to be a piece that goes back there for the Padres, needing potentially multiple major league talents. But the Braves still at least have Nick Allen, and for somewhere in the range of 30-ish to 40 games, hopefully have that position covered to keep Fernando Tatis Jr. fresh for the playoffs there. And, of course, he's also an option there in outfield, and we'll talk about how that can be shifted around a little bit. And you certainly want to consider giving Ronald Acuna Jr. days off in the field with his injury history, of course, in 2026. So, the Braves can offer a really compelling package for Fernando Tatis Jr., including core names and package, including such as Sean Murphy, Cam Kennedy, Tate Southenstein, along with whatever down the line prospects get that deal over the hump. It makes sense for the Braves, as those three names off the cuff is already a huge haul. Although it's, of course, for Fernando Tatis Jr., likely future Hall of Famer, might have to consider Nacho Alvarez gone as well, or potentially a reliever such as Bell Hernandez, along with the aforementioned prospects down the line. Now, some fans may say, whoa, we have shortstop problems right now. And Fernando Tatis Jr., while he might be a perfect shortstop for Atlanta Braves in the 2026 playoffs, he might continue and be more valuable in different positions, such as outfielder later down the line, and might age out of the position or so, as of course the Padres do not have him there. It's certainly a decent concern, although I think he'll certainly be solid there for at least the near-term future as well. Looking for Atlanta Braves situation, they Jose Perdomo is certainly in the organization still, and fans will certainly clap back and say, well, of course he struggled so far. He's certainly young, still in his teenage years, growing up, so way too early to panic on that. But the Atlanta Braves, they should be the favorites to sign the top-rated international prospect in the 2025-2026 International Amateur Free Agent Draft signing pool. And that is shortstop Luis Hernandez out of Venezuela. Of course, with our connection to Venezuela, with Ronald Acuna Jr., I would bet the house the Atlanta Braves signed at least one of him, Luis Hernandez, that is, or Francisco Renteria or Angel Gomez, who are both outfielders and also top four prospects in this year's pool. The Braves have $6,261,600 in international amateur free agent bonus pool money. Likely the size Braves bonus pool means they only land one of those top four names. But never know, could see a deal worked out for two and then some other prospects down the line. Last year, I believe they came away with 9 guys. They very evenly spread out the international bonus pool money, if I remember correctly. So Tatis, would be the number one target for Atlanta Braves this offseason. If they could pull off this deal and empty out the farms, the Atlanta Braves, they need to spend as well in free agency to carefully add to this team, as Tatis on the Braves would instantly launch them into contention with the Dodgers, and no stone should be left unturned preparing them for battle with them after that. Unloading that much prospect talent, Braves must entirely avoid signing players with qualifying offers, which is fine in most departments except for starting pitching, which there are very limited options, and there are no stellar starting pitcher options that were not extending a qualifying option as far as major league talent, MLB talent. The best available option would be Japanese phenom pitcher Tatsuya Mai, who's an international professional free agent, been posted by his NPB club and eligible to be signed by Major League Baseball team. He's had a career low last season, NPB 1.92 ERA, over 150 innings the last season he has pitched. Last season he had a 0.892 whip, a sub 0.5 home runs per 9 his last two seasons, with a 0.4 in 2024 and 0.3 in 2025. So a lot of positive signs that point towards Amai being an effective starting pitcher, if not a very good, not frontline ace starting pitcher for a Major League Baseball team in 2026, if not early on in his career in Major League Baseball. Mai has a 6-pitch mix, including a mid-90s fastball, slider, screwball, sinker, curveball, and most importantly, a splitter, which has been an absolutely devastating pitch in today's MLB game, especially postseason. We saw Yamamoto, Kevin Gausman, Roki Sasaki, names go on, split ballers on split ballers, and the 2025 MLB postseason that absolutely pushed and shoved for the teams and got clean innings. So obstacles for the Braves and signing Tatsuya Mai is, of course, their lack of shown interest in NPB stars since Kenshin Kawakami struggled as Atlanta Braves signed there around the turn of 2010 decade. They really seem to be entirely out of the conversation for Japanese star talent, which is really concerning, as three of the pitchers that would be potential game changers in this offseason for Atlanta Braves all come out of the MPB. Of course, Amai, previously mentioned, he's starting pitching candidate as an international professional free agent, and of course a Japanese born, while Rydell Martinez and Levon Moinello also coming out of the NPB as international professional free agents this season as well. They came out of Cuba, they're not from Japan, but Rydell Martinez might be the best reliever on the market. And as well, Levon Moinello, who converted from a relief pitcher to a starting pitcher, he might be in the mix to be a starting pitcher for some squad as a signee. But for Atlanta Braves purposes, he would potentially be the best left-handed pitcher, relief pitcher option, even in this offseason's free agency. There's very limited options. There's names such as Caleb Ferguson, Chris Martin, of course, Aroldis Chapman, he extended with the Red Sox, which took him out of free agency for this offseason. So Levon Moinello, born in Cuba and in NPB this offseason, he could potentially be, if he wanted to be, the top relief pitching prospect in baseball. Of course, he converted from RP to starting pitching recently, so he might be more interested in being starting pitcher. Of course, they make more money as well. So see that happening. So Braves as well, aforementioned, as far as starting pitching go, they absolutely need a frontline ace caliber starting pitcher. Of course, many fans, they dunked on Max Fried after he struggled versus the Blue Jays just a few weeks ago, of course, in the 2025 playoffs. Of course, that was after shutting down the Red Sox. So I don't quite see the argument. If you're going to struggle in the postseason, you're going to struggle both games. You're not going to be good one game, then bad the other. I think for Max Fried, comes down a little bit to health as well. Blue Jays, they were absolute juggernaut, and he carried, the Yankees the bulk of that season. You really have to consider the workloads and what he did that entire season. And of course, I would make the argument the Yankees, they went for the division title a little bit too much there then. They really wanted that division chip. And if I were them, I would have geared back a little bit and focused more on the playoffs, giving that rotation a bit more rest. So coming back here to the Braves, we don't have starting pitching with substantial better numbers in the playoffs. But Reynaldo Lopez, I believe he had a slightly lower ERA than Max Fried, but I mean, he's not a starter in years in playoffs. Chris Sale is outside of the Red Sox World Series year. His playoff numbers are absolutely horrid. So all these Braves fans are taking a lap on Max Fried. We don't have anything that is definitively better in our rotation. Is why we need a frontline quality, ace quality starting pitcher for Atlanta Braves going this next season. Of course, it's a very refreshing thing to hear Alex Anthopoulos actually admit to that. So we have other question marks. Of course, Reynaldo Lopez and Grant Holmes. It'd be ideal if we could potentially move one or both of them to the bullpen, especially with the depth of relief pitching available in this offseason. Of course, after them and Ray Kerr all went down to serious injuries, switching between the roles, I would hope that sensible conversations and sensible thoughts prevail. And other question marks, Joe Jimenez and Aaron Bummer, is questions around their health, more significantly so for Joe Jimenez. So if the Braves landed Fernando Tatis Jr., I could think Sean Murphy is as good as gone, as Major League talent would have to go back the other way, and I'm probably not trading Michael Harris unless there's a definitive plan to sign Cody Bellinger. Trent Grisham, he has a qualifying offer. And as well, I think that would be too large of a defensive downgrade for our pitching staff to handle and cope with. So as well, if the Braves landed Tatis, Murphy gone, we might see Daysbell gone as well. Might need a little bit more Major League talent. Maybe Nacho. But as far as Murphy being gone, that would be their commonly thought DH solution gone for the Atlanta Braves. Chadwick Tromp, he's already been signed, brought back in the organization, I believe, his minor league deal. I'd feel good about him being our everyday backup to Drake Baldwin. Or if the Braves chose to sign someone else and add even more depth and avoid a potential 2021 situation where we had to trade for guys like Stephen Vogt, who's just won Manager of the Year. Oh. That wasn't so bad, was it? So I feel like Sean Murphy would absolutely be a dispensable piece in a trade. To trade him for Tatis. If Tatis isn't available, maybe trade him for Hunter Green. I think that would be the next available. Had my priorities mixed up. The Diamondbacks, they don't need a catcher. I believe Gabriel Moreno, he's stud for Diamondbacks. Ketel Marte would be my absolute number two offseason trade target after Fernando Tatis Jr. There's been rumors that Diamondbacks are quote-unquote motivated to potentially explore a Ketel Marte trade. I've wanted Ketel Marte on the Braves since 2019. He hasn't shown any signs of slowing down. He used him at second base. Create some question marks with Ozzy Albies. We'll get to that more in a little bit, but focusing now on the Fernando Tatis trade is I'm trying to organize my chart, posted online, the names at the top or the ideal fits for every spot. You've got Fernando Tatis Jr., you got Amai at starting pitcher, you got Cody Bellinger, who we're just about to get to at DH. You got Rizal Iglesias, Rydell Martinez, relief pitcher. I mean, if the Braves got those names and feel like they're definitely going to win the World Series this year. And of course, we have prospects coming up too. J.R. Ritchie might do something. So the Braves aggressively add that much talent, feel very good about things. I'm very pessimistic about them potentially doing this. So a lot of this is just hopeful wishes. Maybe they'll do at least one of these moves. We'll see. So back to DH. So you traded for Fernando Tatis Jr. You signed Tatsuya Mai. And now you want a DH. So get Cody Bellinger. He can play all three outfield spots. You can DH Jurickson Profar. You can get Ronald Acuna Jr. DH time in 2026, save his knees, or hopefully what is a 10-year extension to his contract and keep him Braves for life. So it makes so much sense. And Cody Bellinger would be the number one fit. Of course, Kyle Tucker, he has a qualifying offer. It'd be very expensive as well. His contract would likely be over that of Ronald Acuna Jr. extension. So that might create a little bit of a negative and awkward dynamic as well. Other names that I would be very heavily interested in, and a DH ad solution, that is. Cody Bellinger, of course, isn't a DH. He's an outfielder, but that would move Jurickson Profar to DH and essentially solve that need. So other names that would fit that bill would be Alex Bregman, and he could get help in the situation of Riley coming back from hernia surgery. He could play some third base. I could see him fitting at second base as well. Of course, the Astros, they never had a need to do that. Of course, with Jose Altuve, but of course, Alex Bregman has played third base and shortstop, and I'd assume second base would be cakewalk for him. He spent a little bit of time in the outfield as well early in his career, so he's a little bit of a utility player, although how open to that is he as opposed to playing third base? That's a large question mark as well. So, other names, Josh Naylor, he was just signed today. First announced by Jeff Passan, 5 years to the Mariners. He's off the board. Pete Alonso, he would be a DH solution only, but if you're going to make a Fernando Tatis Jr. trade, you got to add and load up on every position. Of course, Murphy would likely be gone as well, so have to have a DH there. And then Eugenio Suarez, he could also help out in that aforementioned third base situation with Riley coming back from hernia surgery. Of course, wonderful hitter as well. Now, as well, Kyle Schwarber, a very popular name online amongst Braves skepticals. He as well has a qualifying offer, which is a huge obstacle if the Braves were to potentially pull off a Tatis trade. As well, I worry about his inability to not play a position and being a three true outcome hitter. If he had a sudden regression that is Kyle Schwarber in his power, his value would be almost completely gone. While Kyle Tucker is similar annual value, lot longer extension as well, contract that is, you'd still have an opposite field approach. It wasn't as good as last year as years prior, but still, he's a much more dimensional hitter than Schwarber is, at least from what I've been perceiving recently. And as well, he has his defensive capabilities, though with a much higher price tag. With the qualifying offers considered, Cody Bellinger would be the ideal fit, as well as his ability to play center field. I mean, that even gives the Braves a backup option. If Michael Harris somehow continued to struggle, that would give the Braves an option in center field, while still having Profar and Acuna there in the lineup. So, although that would create a situation, that would create question mark. Who DHs in that situation? It'd still need a DH. So to relief pitchers, Rydell Martinez out, an NPB, high velo veteran with stellar numbers. He seems like a slam dunk. Raisel Iglesias, he had a very solid end of the season. Robert Suarez and Emilio Pagan, also high velo options from right side, be great ads for the Braves. Edwin Diaz, he could reunite with his former bullpen coach, migrated from the Mets to the Braves, but would require the qualifying offer, which the Braves could pull off. A Tatis trade would not make any kind of sense to do for a reliever. So Devin Williams as well, he struggled last season, but would be an exciting ad depending on the other scenarios. Sean Newcomb, Caleb Ferguson, Chris Martin would all be exciting depth add the Braves could sign. A couple of the top 5 guys I just named in the relief pitcher department, along with other moves talking about. So some of these names, they may struggle, the relief pitchers that is talking about next season, but they're worth a shot from what they've displayed. A couple of interesting names I've tracked on other teams that could potentially be trade targets are Victor Vodnik, drafted by Atlanta Braves and now on the Colorado Rockies. One thing interesting about him, a little bit concerning, is he has reverse Rockies Coors Field splits. He had an over 4 ERA on the road and a very low ERA at home. So maybe that thin air, that low humidity, that high altitude, that plays better for his stuff. And that might be concerning bringing him to Atlanta in the heat and the humidity and exactly opposite climate that he seemed to struggle with on the road there. Or Garrett Clevenger there, the Tampa Bay Rays veteran. Should still be a possible trade. Both Vodnik and Clevenger, they should still be possible with the Braves' current farm position, even after Tatis trade. Clevenger, of course, he's a high velo lefty veteran. He's a workhorse for the Rays. He had some of splits with runners on base, runner scoring position. A little bit gaudy, a little bit concerning, but the Rays absolutely used him as a workhorse, put him in absolutely every high leverage situation. As long as he's healthy, Garrett Clevenger feels like he'd be a slam dunk as a trade candidate. Although it's always dubious trading with the Tampa Bay Rays, they always seem to win the trade in some kind of crazy extreme fashion. So, aforementioned Fernando Tatis trade for Atlanta Braves is a very lofty goal and unlikely. Anyone who follows my post online knows I'm one of, if not the most pessimistic about the Braves and how this offseason will go. I've stated and won't be surprised if the Braves ended with such names as Mike Soroka, Kyle Wright, Sean Newcomb, Orlando Arcia, just a straight reunions for every need of the offseason, and all on very small contracts. So the front office, they seem a little bit more motivated than recent seasons, so wouldn't be surprised if they did a few things splashy, maybe one of these moves that I've proposed. So other ways to carve this turkey if Tatis isn't available. Corey Seager seems like an even more dubious proposition. There's always rumblings of the Rangers in recent years, their financials, as well as they kind of need a soft rebuild, retool, and hope that some of their younger cores, some of the younger guys, they turn things around. So I don't think the Rockies are trading Ezequiel Tovar. I feel like they would want win-now pieces for talent such as Tovar. I don't quite see us having fits in return with Murphy and prospects. Not quite exactly what worked for them. Even if they're win later down the line prospects. Down the line names such as CJ Abrams, who's been a little bit seemingly an off fit for the Nats in recent years, and of course Atlanta native, Alpharetta area. He's been streaky as well, so could see the Nationals in some scenario trade him in division, although in division, I should say, very highly dubious proposition. Zach Neto as well on the Angels, probably not absolutely not. So, although the Angels are always retooling. Another interesting name, Taylor Walls on the Rays. An organization that's absolutely loaded the shortstop position. He might be an odd man out. And of the names that I have proposed in trade, he might be the most likely candidate to potentially be traded away from the teams. Way more so than Tatis, Seager, and infinitely more than Zach Neto and CJ Abrams, maybe. So, Ha-Seong Kim in free agency, he'd be a very solid ad. Bo Bichette, he would require the qualifying offer, which is tough to carve out, even with no Fernando Tatis trade. As if there's no Tatis trade, no Ketel Marte trade, the most sensible thing to do with this prospect depth that the Braves have is to make a trade for a starting pitcher, frontline starting pitcher. A name that I like the best is Hunter Green. For the Reds, I see him as the best move from the Braves. He has absolute dominant ace capable stuff with immense performance struggle stats and less accolades than Tarek Skubal. I imagine the cost for Hunter Green would be less, even though that does not quite make sense. Maybe the Reds front office values it differently, but the suggestions for Tarek Skubal have just been absolutely crazy. And I think that Hunter Green trade might be able to pull off with a little bit less than some of those gaudy suggestions. As well, Pablo Lopez, Edward Cabrera, who's in division, less likely. Also be great high velo options. Not too excited about potential Joe Ryan, Chris Bassett options in trade or free agency. And of course, qualifying option, signing a player with a qualifying option. There were 13 players extend a qualifying option in this year's MLB free agency. Lose a draft pick. And even with that draft pick lost in signing a player with a qualifying option, it is a much cheaper option prospect-wise than making a huge trade. And so there are a few names that excite me as far as starting pitcher and qualifying option. Framber Valdez, Ranger Suarez, Michael King, all names offer the qualifying option. Be very exciting ads. And if the Braves were also to sign position player-wise, Ha-Seong Kim, Cody Bellinger, or Alex Bregman to really fill out the lineup, I would feel very excited about this 2026 Braves team. I feel as talented as the team is, it's an absolute arms race, to speak metaphorically, between the Dodgers, the Phillies, and the Mets. Just looking in the division, the Phillies and Mets, they're absolutely gearing up for an arms race to win the division and contend with the Dodgers. The Dodgers are just on a different level than every team in Major League Baseball, and it would take quite a bit of an effort for the Braves to get on their level, even with talents as great as Ronald Acuna Jr., Austin Riley, Matt Olson, and Spencer Schwellenbach, everybody else. So that's where I see the Fernando Tatis Jr. trade being so key. It added them the top line of bat instantly. And from there, you could add a name like Bregman. Cody Bellinger would just be absolutely stellar and get some pitching. That's the ideal situation as my graphic depicts. There are other names there, of course. There's different ways to carve up that situation. I feel like if they were to add Ha-Seong Kim and one of Cody Bellinger, Alex Bregman, a couple nice bats in between, that feel very nice, and as well potentially a qualifying offer pitcher, Michael King, Ranger Suarez, Framber Valdez. That would be a very exciting offseason for Atlanta Braves, and feel good about their chances contending with the Dodgers. Other starting pitchers extend the qualifying offer. Not as excited about Zach Gallen, although he could bounce back after a struggling season. Dylan Cease, who Braves fans don't like Fried's postseason numbers, don't look at Cease's, although he's been connected to the Braves a lot and certainly could come home, certainly being from the area. Shota Imanaga as well. He was extend the qualifying option by the Cubs after they declined his contract. Very weird way of doing business by the Cubs. Does not seem recommended. They probably should just picked up his contract. So Bellinger, aforementioned, he'd move Profar to every 8-day DH, provide a bunch of flexibility. Tatis, if the trade were to concern, look for a less expensive option, adding in the DH role, which would make Alonso, Eugenio Suarez, or Alex Bregman potentially make more sense than Bellinger. Riley, aforementioned, coming back from hernia surgery. Third base options such as Eugenio Suarez or even more utility functional options such as Alex Bregman could be a second base solution, of course, if Ozzie Albies struggles again. Might make more sense, especially contract value wise, as Cody Bellinger, he's going to be pushing the $200 million mark. On my graphic, there is Luis Arias. He really struggled in 2025. I think he lands with an upshot, lower spinning organization, maybe a Pirates or a Reds, a team like that. Pirates, maybe a Tigers or so, and gets the opportunity to play every day, improve on his numbers, and get a larger contract maybe down the road. Might be looking at a 1+1 or so, but I don't really see him. I don't really see him landing with a situation such as ours, where most of our everyday positions are filled, and he'd potentially be competing for a spot either out of spring training or after an injury occurred. So he'd be a wonderful depth piece for the Braves to have, but just doesn't really make much sense. Steven Kwan, he can play all three outfield positions, rumored to be on the trading block. Could see him playing some good second base as well, even though we haven't seen that. Not possible with a Tatis trade, but maybe with a Hunter Green one. Ketel Marte, aforementioned, he'd be my absolute second trade target after Fernando Tatis Jr. His offensive game would fit beautifully with this Braves lineup. In that situation, Ha-Seong Kim re-signing would be the meta, absolutely essential, would be instantly give us, the Braves, the best middle defense in Major League Baseball. Ozzie Albies would unfortunately become an instant question mark with his low AAV. Would be wonderful to keep depth and maybe platoon Ozzie with Murphy if he's still there after Ketel Marte trade. Of course, the Diamondbacks, they have a young stud catcher. They don't need Sean Murphy. But one thing I didn't think of when I was making these notes, could Ozzie Albies make sense for the Diamondbacks? They give him a marketable player that will certainly sell some tickets, and give him one more year with his signed player option. And he's still under control as well for next season, another team option. It might give the Diamondbacks a stopgap to see if Jordan Lawler eventually work out. So that might work. It might make sense. I really did not see a player return to the Diamondbacks. So I didn't. Something I'll have to think about, revisit here on some posts following up in following days. But I was thinking that the Diamondbacks, they're not quite as geared towards winning now as the Padres. So potentially we might be able to slide with a very small amount of major league talent return for Ketel Marte as opposed to Tatis, who I feel like would absolutely require Sean Murphy or so. I mean, of course, Ketel Marte trade would be absolutely gaudy prospect return, but I feel like it could maybe slide with less major league talent, but maybe not. A situation to certainly monitor. So it's been an exciting episode of the BOS Sports blogcast. We look forward to tracking this Atlanta Hawks team, seeing how they do, seeing how Trae Young returns, and how he looks in his return. That'll certainly be a huge decision for the Hawks. If he comes back and cannot shoot, the Hawks are really in a dubious situation. Of course, he's got his player option for next year. He'll have little to no trade value, and he could be looking at just letting him walk in free agency. Hopefully he turns things around and regains his shot from field, and I'm pretty confident they will. So, for Atlanta Braves. We'll see how their off seasons go. Of course, my prediction of Walt Weiss being their manager came 100% true. For Atlanta Falcons, where to start? I don't even like to talk about the Falcons, to be honest. So, this has been a great episode of BOS Sports Podcast. Can't say when the next one will be, but be sure to stream previous episodes, BOS Sports Blogcast. Stream Bar Soap Music on your favorite platform. And we'll see you when we'll see you.